listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Craddock, and I'm the Programs and Accreditation Manager at Perry Johnson Registrars. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, The Transition Strategy on IATF 16949. The slides today are courtesy of the AIAG, and the original presenter of this material was Mrs. Michelle Maxwell of the IAOB. Today we're going to focus on the transition strategy for IATF 16949. And this presentation is going to be most helpful for those organizations that are currently certified to ISO TS 16949. This strategy was presented at the IATF Global Stakeholder Conference in Rome, Italy in April 2016. And was developed to explain the process for existing certified organizations to upgrade to IATF 16949, as well as the process for new organizations seeking certification. Feedback from participants at that conference led to a revised strategy that was released in August 2016, superseding the original April version. The transition strategy is publicly available at either aiag.org or iatfglobaloversight.org, and it's free. On the AIAG page, if you click download here within this red box, you can get a copy of the transition strategy. And IATF Global Oversight, it's under latest news, and you can click and download a PDF copy. During the transition process, we're all learning and working together. Certified organizations, conformity assessment bodies such as PJR, the oversight offices, and the IATF, as well as the certification body auditors and the oversight office witness auditors. Questions are going to come up. The IATF oversight offices are committed to sharing the questions, agreeing to a common response, and publishing the responses for certified bodies, certification bodies and organizations to understand. Several new FAQs were released in October. And I strongly encourage that you subscribe to the mailing list on IATF Global Oversight to receive automatic email notifications when any changes related to the automotive certification scheme are published. So here you'll see an option to subscribe to the mailing list on iatfglobaloversight.org. If you enter your email address and hit subscribe, you'll get email updates. Now, what's already happened? The IATF has launched a training process for certification body auditors to complete in order to conduct audits to IATF 16949. A CB auditor has to pass a quiz on both the standard itself and Rules 5th edition. Rules was revised to 5th edition and became effective the 1st of January 2017. The deadline for certification body auditors to complete this training is June 30th, 2017. Many PJR auditors have already completed this training, as many organizations have indicated that they want to begin transitioning as early as April. Certification bodies are developing. In PJR's case, we've already developed communications to send to our clients and auditors about the transition process. And the scheduling department will work with you to make sure that we schedule your transition audit in accordance with the rules and what makes the most sense for our auditor resources and you as a client. These webinars are specifically designed as a communication tool to provide insight and guidance on the transition process, Rules 5th edition, and changes to the standard itself. As there is so much information. We're presenting the changes in a series of 4 webinars. The last, really 2.5, focusing on changes to the standard. In this specific presentation, our purpose is to provide guidance to certified organizations on how to apply the transition rules to your organization, and then also to provide guidance on organizations seeking to become certified for the first time. So what do you need to do? The first thing, if you haven't done this already, buy a copy of IATF 16949. It's been available since October. And you will also need to purchase a copy of ISO 9001 2015. Both standards are needed to achieve certification to IATF 16949. You cannot just become certified to IATF 16949 itself. In fact, I'm going to read from the foreword on page 7 of the IATF 16949 standard. This Automotive Quality Management System standard, herein referred to as Automotive QMS Standard, or IATF 16949, along with applicable customer-specific requirements, ISO 9001 2015 requirements, and ISO 9000 2015 defines the fundamental quality management system requirements for automotive production and relevant service parts organizations. Here's what's important. As such, this automotive QMS standard cannot be considered a standalone QMS standard, but has to be comprehended as a supplement to and used in conjunction with ISO 9001 2015. ISO 9001 2015 is published as a separate ISO standard. So you need to buy both documents and meet the requirements of both documents in order to be certified to IATF 16949. Once you have those tools, you should perform a gap analysis to IATF 16949 2016 and ISO 9001 2015. If you haven't already completed this, I encourage you to get it done as quickly as possible. The gap analysis should include every site or supporting function included in your scope of certification. The IATF has not published a common gap analysis tool. Organizations have to create their own, and certification bodies are not providing gap analyses as a service or conducting pre-assessments for already certified clients. The AIAG, however, does have a gap analysis tool on their website, and I would encourage you to use this if you don't want to use a homebrew or homegrown version, one that you develop within your organization. When you know what the gaps are, develop an action plan. This will help close the gaps between the current quality management system you have and the new requirements in IATF 16949 and ISO 9001. And any good development plan should include timing, the key milestones you have to meet, and assign responsibilities and authorities, and then clearly indicate the status of each milestone. And as you would with any living document, keep it up to date. It's important that you understand the transition strategy, which is what we're reviewing right now. It applies to manufacturing sites and remote supporting locations. You need to understand how the requirements affect you and apply to your organization and where you're at in your audit cycle. Make sure that you are subscribing to IATF Global Oversight to get updates. And if there's any questions, PJR would be more than happy to field them. You need to conduct a full systems internal audit to IATF 16949 and a management review prior to PJR's transition audit. And this will demonstrate that you're in compliance with all of the requirements of IATF 16949 as well as ISO 9001 2015. A lot of different ways to accomplish this. You can do it through a combination of previous internal system audits that cover requirements that aren't new or haven't changed, and then a supplemental internal audit to cover the additional requirements of IATF 16949. Or you can do a brand new, complete, full system audit after you're fully implemented to IATF 16949. Management review can be accomplished through a combination of previous management reviews covering inputs and outputs that aren't new or haven't changed, and a supplemental management review in conjunction with the additional requirements of IATF 16949. Regarding the internal audit, I think it's important to note that internal auditor competency requirements have changed, and the changes are significant. Those are covered in Section 723 of IATF 16949. And it's important to know that those changes I feel are significant, and your auditors need to meet these before conducting these internal audits. You then, in conjunction with Perry Johnson Registrars or your certification body, need to identify which regularly scheduled audit in calendar year 2017 or 2018 will be the transition audit to IATF 16949. Manufacturing sites and remote supporting functions locations certified to TS 16949 all need to transition to IATF 16949 through a transition audit. The transition audit will occur at the next regularly scheduled audit in accordance with the allowable timing in IATF Rules 5.1.1. This allows you to go up to 3 months early, 1 month late. Transition audit in most cases for those folks on an annual surveillance frequency. This transition audit replaces the next regularly scheduled surveillance or recertification audit. We are not transitioning clients, and we're not allowed to transition clients on special audits. You need to be ready on your next regularly scheduled surveillance or recertification audit in either calendar year 2017 or 2018. Transition audits could have started as early as the 1st of January 2017. PJR has not conducted any. We don't have any clients expressing an interest to go in first quarter, but they are mandatory starting the 1st of October 2017. So essentially there are two options for transitioning, a voluntary transition or a mandatory transition. So in the voluntary option, for any audit, initial surveillance or recertification that is occurring between 1st of this year through the 30th of September 2017, you can either choose to be certified to IATF 16949 or ISO TS 16949. You can go either way. However, if you're going to have either your initial audit or your surveillance or recertification audit due date is on or after the 1st of October 2017, the transition audit is mandatory at the next regularly scheduled audit. And we'll demonstrate these two options on the next few slides with some concrete examples. So let's start by taking a look at example 1, the voluntary transition. So in this particular case, the client had their initial audit, their stage 2, on June 2015. Obviously, their first surveillance audit is due 1 year later. They're on an annual frequency, June 2016. And surveillance audit 2 is due June 2017. There is the option to go up to 3 months early, but no more than 1 month late. But because that grace period happens before the 1st of October 2017, which is the deadline, the organization can either transition on that June 2017 audit or make a decision to wait until their June 2018 audit. So this voluntary transition offers a transition in either 2017 or 2018 based on the timing of the organization's regular surveillance or recertification audit. Example 2 demonstrates a mandatory transition where there is not flexibility. So in this particular example, the client stage 2 ended in November 2015. Surveillance 1 was conducted November 2016, and surveillance 2 is due November 2017. Because the surveillance due date is after the 1st of October 2017, the organization must transition in November 2017. They do not have the option of waiting till November 2018. The organization is required to transition to IATF 16949 at Surveillance 2 if the audit is conducted after the 1st of October 2017. There are consequences if you do not conduct the transition audit on time. If timing requirements can't be met and the transition audit was replacing your normal surveillance audit, we will initiate the decertification process, meaning we suspend your certificate. Once your certificate is suspended, this essentially buys you 90 days to schedule and complete your on-site transition audit. If this on-site transition audit is not scheduled and completed within 90 calendar days, your certificate is withdrawn. In order to become certified to IATF 16949, you have to start over with a brand new certification audit. If you don't meet the timing requirements and the transition audit was replacing a recertification audit, we will allow you to ride out your current certificate until it expires, and then you would have to start over with an initial certification audit to IATF 16949. To be clear, an organization cannot transition from ISO TS 16949 to IATF 16949 on a special audit outside of the regularly scheduled surveillance or recertification audit cycle. On a transfer audit, so you cannot move to a new certification body and transition on the same audit. And the IATF is taking this very seriously and has put safeguards in place to prevent this from happening. In the rare case that you contracted with a new CB prior to the revised transition strategy coming out in August, you may be grandfathered. So let's talk about the transition audit process itself. It follows the following steps: execution of the audit, management of any nonconformities, a decision by veto power to certify or not to certify, and then issuance of the certificate. The transition audit does start a new 3-year audit cycle, and this is because the transition audit is equivalent in duration to a recertification audit. A full system audit covering all the requirements of IATF 16949 2016, as well as ISO 9001 2015. So because you're doing a recertification audit time, you're getting a brand new 3-year certificate, even if you were normally due for a surveillance audit. As I just stated, the duration of the transition audit will be equivalent to a recertification audit. We can apply discounts for corporate scheme and no product design. You're required to submit your quality manual and updated procedures demonstrating conformity to IATF 16949 prior to the start of the transition audit for an off-site document review. PJR has already developed a form to guide you through which documents you need to submit. And on that same form, our auditors will document the review results of their off-site documentation analysis, provide any feedback to you if necessary. If you do not provide this required documentation, an additional 4 hours of on-site time will be added to your site's audit to collect and review the missing information. PJR hopes to avoid having to do this. So when requested, please submit your documentation. All rules, fifth requirements for audit team, conducting the audit, nonconformity management, and certification decision will apply. There are a few deviations to the rules to support organizations and certification bodies to accomplish the transition process. Obviously, with all organizations undergoing a recertification audit in the next 18 months, it's going to require a lot more resources from the certification body. So IATF has approved some deviations to support this. And if a positive certification decision to IATF 16949 is made, a new 3-year certificate cycle begins. want to caution you about the risks of a transition audit being too close to the expiration of the current ISO TS 16949 certificate. Remember that any nonconformities issued at the transition audit have to be closed within 90 days. The certification body then gets an additional 30 days for a certification decision to be made. This is 120 days from the last day of your audit. The risk is that your certificate could expire before this process is completed. And we'll demonstrate this with an example. So suppose you make the decision to transition in June 2018. If you take the full 60 days to provide nonconformity responses to your auditor, and your auditor takes the full 30 days to accept those responses, and the CB's veto power takes the full 30 days to make a decision, we're at the 120-day max, or October 2018. Remember, however, that the obsolescence date of ISO TS 16949 is September 14, 2018. As such, there'll be a period of time from September 14, 2018 until that 120-day mark is reached where you potentially could have no valid certificate. The IATF has approved a deviation to allow certification bodies to make a positive certification decision after the expiration date of ISO TS 16949 as long as that decision is still made within 120 days. And as that previous schematic showed, this could result in a period of time where the client is no longer certified. You need to consider the risks of this and how your customers are going to react if that should occur. I encourage you to work with your scheduler to communicate the dates you're planning to have the transition audit. Get those dates locked in as soon as possible. As the saying goes, the early bird gets the worm. If you want to schedule your 2017 and 2018 audits, I encourage you to do this. If you wait too close to your next regularly scheduled audit, it's possible we will not have available resources to support the audit with your timing in mind. Again, in summary, what should you be doing now? You should have already bought the standards, IATF 16949 2016, as well as ISO 9001 2015. As you get ready to transition, we're going to have you sign a contract or amendment with your CB, PJR. Some organizations will choose to transition to 9001 2015 first, but this isn't necessary. Perform your gap analysis and develop an action plan to close the gaps. If you're a new organization, based on the results of that gap analysis, decide if you're going to go with ISO TS 16949 or IATF 16949. Keep in mind, if you choose the former, your certificate will expire the 14th of September 2018. And confirm your initial audit date with your certification body as soon as possible. If you're currently certified to ISO 9001-2008, there's no upgrade discount for new organizations. That's only if you are upgrading from ISO 9001-2015. Okay, that is it on the transition strategy. Next, we are going to move to the changes in Rules 5th edition. Now, Rules 5th edition is the document that provides the scheme rules for certification to IATF 16949, and it has many requirements for certification bodies. However, many of these requirements directly impact the certified organization, so it's important that you understand them. Again, the original presenter of these AIAG slides was Michelle Maxwell of the IAOB, and today I will be walking through them. So the International Automotive Task Force decided to update Rules 4th edition in parallel with the revisions to IATF 16949. The title of the document remains rules for achieving and maintaining IATF recognition, but is now at 5th edition, even though IATF 16949 is at the 1st edition. The main changes are to incorporate all of the 14 sanctioned interpretations and as many of the 33 frequently asked questions as possible, clarify any IATF intentions where clarification was needed, and then make changes that improve the scheme. The SIs and FAQs were previously available at IATFGlobalOversight.org. These changes impact certified organizations, organizations looking to become certified, as well as IATF recognized certification bodies. It's important that when an organization purchases a copy of the standard, they also purchase a copy of Rules 5th edition. And Rules 5th edition has been available since November 2016 and has been effective since the 1st of January 2017, whether you're getting certified to ISO TS 16949 or IATF 16949. This presentation is not going to cover the existing Rules 4th edition SIs and FAQs that were incorporated into Rules 5th and are available at IATFGlobalOversight.org until they're archived at the end of last year. This presentation is going to summarize the significant changes, clarifications, and new requirements affecting both certified organizations and IATF recognized certification bodies. So the first change is that OEM customer specified accessory parts suppliers are now eligible for certification, and this is covered in Rules 1.0. They need to be manufactured to OEM specifications and procured or released by the OEM, mechanically attached or electronically connected to the vehicle, and installed on the vehicle or the powertrain before or after delivery to the final customer. And the rationale for including accessory parts suppliers was that IATF members felt it was important to change the eligibility requirements to allow this group of suppliers to have their QMS certified. Second, and while this isn't a change, it was a clarification of intent. A manufacturing site supplying to customers requiring third-party certification to IATF 16949 or ISO TS 16949, remember these rules have been in effect since the 1st of January 2017, has to include all automotive customers in their scope. And again, this is covered in Rules 1.0. So if a particular organization has General Motors as a customer who requires third-party certification and Honda who does not, then the automotive product manufactured for both customers must be included in the audit. The IATF felt that clarification was needed based on the questions they were receiving from organizations and conformity assessment bodies. And while this has always been the intent of the rules, it's not been explicitly stated. So all automotive manufacturing occurring within the organization has to be included in the scope, regardless of whether or not an organization's customers require certification to either IATF 16949 or ISO TS 16949. A certification body's legally enforceable agreement with the client now has to include a provision to allow the contract to be extended until all transfer activities to a new certification body are complete. The new CB has to advise the client to notify their previous CB about their intent to transfer. And the client shall notify their existing certification body about their intent to transfer to a new IATF recognized certification body. This is covered in Rules 3.2 as well as 7.1. And the intent is that certification bodies should be working together to allow a seamless transition from one CB to another, keeping the organization's certification intact. The previous CB shall not use the notification of transfer as a justification to suspend or withdraw the organization's certificate before the transfer process is complete. However, there must be a valid extended contract in place, and if not, the previous CB can suspend, cancel, or withdraw the certificate. And again, the rationale for this new requirement is to strengthen and ensure an effective transfer process occurs in a spirit of cooperation between the two certification bodies. Previously, the incumbent CB was sometimes canceling the existing certificate before the new CB could issue a certificate, which affected the organization's status with their customers. The client shall submit the number of employees for the site and all remote supporting functions as part of the audit planning. And this is something PJR has always required. The ITF believes it's critical that the certification body gets an up-to-date employee count during the audit planning phase to ensure that audit time has been calculated correctly, and giving us enough time to make any adjustments, increasing or decreasing the duration of the audit, perhaps adding an additional audit team member if we need to increase the audit duration. This is much easier to do months or weeks before the audit as opposed to when the auditor's already on site. Rules 5.9 has eliminated the ability to terminate an audit due to the identification of a major nonconformity. This means initial surveillance, recertification, transfer, or special audits cannot be terminated. In exceptional circumstances, an emergency, natural disaster, etc., obviously an audit can be terminated. However, the IATF wants to understand what the audit outcome is and understand fully the extent of compliance or non-compliance with the requirements. Rules 4th previously allowed audits to be terminated if major nonconformities were being identified. Rules 5.10f clarifies that the certification body's final audit report shall include a written description of the interaction with support processes at other sites or remote supporting locations that were audited. This clarification strengthens the written report for the reader who needs to understand where and how the interactions happened and how they were audited. Having this detailed written description is helpful to those not conducting the audit to ensure that certificates are accurate. (5.11) split nonconformity management into 5 subsections. The client's responsibility for a major nonconformity, the client's responsibility for a minor nonconformity, what the CB's responsibilities are, on-site verification for a major nonconformity, as well as on-site verification for a minor nonconformity. Whereas there's been no changes to the requirements, the new layout improves the structure of the process and makes it easier to follow. In Rules 4th edition, there were a lot of requirements in a paragraph format, and this is much easier to process and understand. An elimination of a redundancy has also occurred. The client has to submit root cause and implement a correction within 20 days from the closing meeting of a surveillance audit and a recertification audit when a major nonconformity is identified. However, this requirement was already covered in Rules 8.1 and 8.2. (7.11) incorporated the semi-automated checking process if an organization is transferring from one CB to another, and also added the requirement that either the CB or client's failure to complete all the required activities prior to the start of the transfer audit shall result in an initial certification audit. And the rationale for this is that it's important to separate the transfer requirements related to the semi-automated checking process from the requirements that are performed manually. And they also wanted to make sure that the consequences are clearly laid out when all transfer activity requirements are not met. There's been a reorganization of the structure of special audits to display the list of reasons for special audits in a bulleted list. Elimination of the ability to terminate a special audit, and clarification that special audits of a remote supporting location are not entered in the IATF database as standalone events. The CB is now required to conduct a special on-site verification audit when the decertification suspension process has been initiated due to a special status condition from an IATF OEM. The IATF wants to be sure that CBs enter this audit into the IATF database. This requirement is a current practice, but was not previously documented as a requirement. And that concludes the changes to Rules 5th edition. And at this point in time, I will now gladly field any questions that you have on either the transition strategy or changes to Rules 4th edition, making them Rules 5th edition. All participants have been muted to ensure sound quality, so feel free to type your questions into either the chat or question feature. Getting some questions on whether or not these slides and a recording will be made available, and we are now able to share these slides and the recording, and those will be made available at a later point in time. Typically takes about 48 to 72 hours to get that posted. Great question from Peter on the gap analysis tool. Peter, this is available at aiag.org. Someone's asking me, how would you rate the difficulty in the transition? I personally think the transition is going to be very difficult for all organizations, whether they're a small mom and pop shop or a larger facility. I think the new requirements are significant, and I think the changes are considerable. And especially if you have to transition this year, you need to get on understanding and implementing those requirements yesterday. And the next 3 webinars will go through the changes to the IATF 16949 itself. As those changes are so significant, we will not be covering changes in ISO 9001-2015 from ISO 9001-2008 in this particular webinar series. PGR does offer a series of webinars on 9001-2015, so you'll want to listen to those as well. Lots of additional requirements for internal auditors, and again, those are covered in section 723 of the standard. There's a requirement to have a documented process to verify internal auditors are competent that takes into account any customer-specific requirements. Auditors need to be able to demonstrate the following competencies: understanding of the automotive process approach, including risk-based thinking, as a third-party auditor, I need to see clearly that your audits were conducted with the automotive process approach and an emphasis on risk-based thinking. It has to come clear, ring clear in your output of your internal audit. Your internal auditors need to understand your customer-specific requirements, as well as the requirements of 9001 and IATF 16949. Understand how core tools might apply based on what they're auditing. And obviously understand audit execution, planning, conducting, reporting, and closing out audit findings. And there are additional requirements for auditors doing manufacturing process audits as well as product audits. ISO transition webinars have been available for a long time, Manuel. Just visit our website, www.pjr.com, for information on when those ISO 9001-2015 webinars are being conducted. Jana's describing a specific situation unique to her organization. They're ISO 9001-2008, transitioning to ISO 9001-2015 in May, and they will upgrade to IATF 16949 in January 2018. Jana, this allows an upgrade discount to be applied to your initial certification to IATF 16949. Mr. Ito, ISO 9001-2015 certification is not necessary prior to IATF 16949 certification. The two standards have to be implemented and adhered to in order to achieve IATF 16949. However, 9001-2015 certification does not have to come first. Bill's asking a question about auditor rotation. They're due for their IATF, their TS recertification this year. They're going to transition to IATF next year. They're asking, can we use the same auditor for IATF and the next two surveillance audits, needing the same auditor for 4 years? And in this case, and at this point in time, that's okay, Bill. Probably on your next 3-year cycle, it will not be, as there's no transition going on. Someone's asking about the requirements in 724, a second-party audit. 724 details requirements for second-party auditor. A second-party audit is an audit of your suppliers, and second-party audits are required. So 724 is the competency requirements for second-party auditors. And second-party audit requirements themselves are covered in section, turning to it right now, 84241. The organization shall include a second-party audit process in your supplier management approach. Second-party audits may be used for the following: supplier risk assessment, monitoring, QMS development, or product or process audits. So you need to be conducting second-party audits. The individuals conducting those audits have to meet the requirements of 724 of the standard. Manuel's asking if we have to demonstrate compliance with IATF 16949 as part of the internal audits prior to the recertification. By recertification, Manuel, I'm assuming that you mean the transition audit that's equivalent in duration to a recertification audit. And yes, you absolutely have to be conforming to IATF 16949. You need to conduct an internal audit management review and submit the required documents for the pre-audit documentation review to PJR. Absolutely yes. Wait a few minutes to see if there are any other questions. Again, feel free to type them into the question or chat feature. Someone's asking, how do we get the certification of ISO 9001-2015? Again, to be very clear, you cannot get certified to IATF 16949 unless you also meet the requirements of ISO 9001-2015. You have to buy both documents and conform to both documents. The certificate that we issue will simply say IATF 16949-2016. It's understood that that certificate covers the requirements of 9001-2015. If you want a separate certificate for ISO 9001-2015, PJR can issue you one. We may or may not add additional time to your audit. If you have non-automotive manufacturing you want covered by 9001-2015, we will be adding time to your audit for this. I hope this answers your question, Christine. Again, I'll wait a couple more minutes to see if any other questions come in. Again, folks, I'm happy to field any questions you have. Okay, we have one coming in now. Justin saying, we're planning the IATF transition, but that will mean because of our schedule we will have a lapse between the end of our old TS certificate and getting certified for IATF. Can this be done? We'd be out of compliance for 2 months. Yes, this would certainly be a red flag to your customers, Justin. I'm not sure how you can know that you're going to have a lapse unless you know for certain that you're not going to have your audit before September 14th, 2018. If that's the case, you're not transitioning. You would have to have a new audit. But the transition strategy is really set up to minimize lapses. Unless you're making a conscious decision to transition July, August, September of 2018. Then potentially you would be out of compliance for upwards of 2 months. This may or may not be a red flag to your customers. It depends who your customers are. The following webinars will be held on Wednesdays, Mr. Robertson, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. The two documents are considerable in price, Christine. IATF 16949 Rules 5th, as well as ISO 9001 2015. IATF 16949 2016 and Rules 5th edition can be purchased from aiag.org, and if you're a member, the price is considerably less than for non-members. ISO 9001 2015 can be purchased from ISO.org or ASQ. Justin, if your customers are Ford, GM, and FCA, my guess is that they would be concerned that there's a lapse. We'll wait a few minutes to see if there's any other questions. If not, we'll conclude early. Well, thank you for your participation today. I know your time is valuable. Again, I encourage you to tune in March 15th, March 22nd, and March 29th. We'll be reviewing the changes to the standard itself in detail. I also encourage you to check out our website, www.pjr.com, for information on the 9001 2015 Transition Webinar Series. We'll wait one more minute to see if there's any other questions, and then we'll conclude. Okay, folks, that appears to be all the questions. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found today's webinar helpful. We look forward to your participation on the remaining 3 webinars in this series. Good luck on your transition.